So my rock bottom, what I thought was rock bottom, to use that term, is there were times when I didn't want to be around anymore, didn't want to live anymore. So I stood on tops of bridges twice, not wanting to be around, and somehow pulled myself off. And I was binge eating a lot, but then not eating for 2 days. So I would train a lot. So on the outside, my body shape didn't change at all, but I was being extremely unhealthy by eating one night, tubs of ice cream, loaves of bread, packets of nuts and whatever, and then literally wouldn't eat for 2 days, but train 10 hours. At its worst, I was sleeping 6 to 8 hours a week. Some nights I wouldn't even put pajamas on. I wouldn't even get into bed. Just was pointless. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm still sitting up, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go for a run. And I would go and run for like 3 hours. I'd get back. The sun's starting to come up, 6 o'clock. Fine, I'm going to start my day. And I was doing this multiple days. In 2015, I did a big self-created challenge called the Ultimate Triathlon, a 2,000 kilometer in 12 days swim, cycle and run from Morocco to Monaco. And there's an award-winning documentary on Amazon Prime about it, which is pretty mind-blowing what I was able to do, how I was able to push my body from a mental perspective. But when I finished that, my body basically broke down. And this is the turning point. And after the Ultimate Triathlon, I had some soft tissue injuries, thought fine, have a few months rest, started to train again, and then I couldn't. And then my body literally shut down. So everything was building up to this moment. I finished the big challenge, but then I was having headaches for 6 hours every morning. I could barely walk down the road from my house without stopping and feeling completely out of breath. I had no appetite and I was just sleeping a lot. And so the turning point for my life post-football was in the 18 months after the Ultimate Triathlon. So really up until the start of 2017, when I didn't do anything for 18 months. I recovered from a physical, emotional, mental perspective. I spent a lot of time with a therapist. And during those 18 months, I could start living my life however I want. I don't have to associate myself as being an athlete. I grieved, so to speak, from retiring from football. I understood my mental health. I started to talk about it a little bit more with close friends and family, which shocked a lot of people, but at the same time helped me. So I did a lot of work personally, while physically my body was like done. It made me stop. A lot of people in this day and age live lives in very neutral, where they miss things because they're so busy and head down physically, literally and figuratively. So I became very aware of how I felt from emotional standpoint in that period, and it's continued on. I don't see therapists anymore. I learn a lot from seeing one for a couple of years. It's constant. It's constant, the work that I do to be able to be stable from a mental perspective, from an emotional perspective, and also just to be able to truly live life on a daily basis. I was taught some very significant lessons, and this is one of the things we connected about, was when I went to Nepal. When I was living high up in the rural mountains, like what I mean by that is you're up at 2,500 to 3,000 meters above sea level. You're living on the edge of ridges, like on tops of massive mountains. You have no electricity, no running water. The houses are made out of like mud and with a little bit of wooden frames. The buffaloes and the chickens and the goats sleep inside next to you, and they lived every day to survive the next one. So they got up and they cooked food. They milked the buffalo. They let the chickens out. The goats were there. I couldn't understand after a couple of weeks why they had goats, because we didn't eat goat and we didn't drink any goat's milk or anything like that. I'm like, I get the chickens for the eggs, I get the buffaloes for the milk, and then at times they, like one family in the village would slaughter a buffalo and they'd use the meat and they'd share it. I'm like, why do they have goats? Well, that was their garbage disposal, because the goats would eat anything. Yeah. So that was their garbage system, their waste removal system were the goats, and every family had goats. And like they had nothing, and the life expectancy probably wasn't super high, but it taught me a lot about life, but it wasn't until later that I realized the impact it had on me. So I came back in 2013 from like 2 months being in Nepal, and then life sort of like, it was a mind-blowing experience, and then life sort of happened. And it was only really when I started to come out of that I realized what it had taught me. And so one of the big things was that you don't need things to be happy. After football, it was the same thing. It was, what's the next challenge? What's the next adventure? So I was living like that. But here's the other side of that coin. I also had this very good quality of being able to live in the moment I was in. So although I was always looking towards a future, but let's say in the middle of a match, I was so focused. So it was like, what I'm doing right now that was important to me, I was nowhere else except in this moment, living in the purest form. But once that thing, that game, that challenge, that run, that whatever it was, that meeting is done, and there was sort of this transition period between things, my mind was like, fast forward. From a young age, I was exposed to a high level of mental performance training. Growing up in Australia at high level sport in the 90s, where Australia put a lot of money into that, I was working with sports psychologists, being taught meditation by, I think they were performance coaches, but they were meditation teachers. Like, and we're talking mid-90s. I'm a 14-year-old kid laying on my back, focusing on my breath, focusing on each muscle group. And so I had training at a high level from a very young age. Like, meditation and stuff in the Western world is cool. That's what everyone does and what everyone talks about in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And even in the UK, which is maybe taken a little bit longer to adopt in the mainstream of meditation, I tell people, they're like, oh, do you meditate? Or when did you start meditating? And I'm like, about 1994, 1995. And they're like, what? And some of them think, well, meditation wasn't even around then. And I'm like, well, it's been around for a lot longer than you think. Oh, that is another good question. It's very fulfilling. It's very fulfilling because I have a lead up, an execution, and a reflection period. So, and these three elements, I've just made up those names. It's not like a structure thing that I work on, but it is. I focus on the lead up and what I need to do to get me to the start line. So I'm all the time, like when I do some mentals training stuff, so I'll do positive and negative visualization about the adventure that I'm doing, and all the type of mental strength training things that I do for the challenge. But in the lead up, I'm focusing on the start line. That's pretty much it. When phase 2 happens, it's the celebration. It's a party. It's like fun. It's like, I know that I can just enjoy the moment now. And I do. And I've been able to do that because of this journey I've been on that we've been talking about. So I look at it as the party, the celebration. And there's been so many people who have watched my documentaries or follow me online when I've done these big challenges. Like in August, I did the Calendar Club where I ran 500 miles in August. And every day, like I ran every day consecutively. And I was doing posts on Instagram and Facebook. And I had so many people say, you are like, you just look like you're enjoying yourself. You look so happy, and it's refreshing to see that, you know, you're never down in the dumps. That's because I've done the work in phase 1. And I know in phase 2, the actual event, I choose how I want to be. Where I stop, I look inside, I listen to what I see, I ask questions of myself and ask others, and then I learn from that experience. And I look at all the positives and the negatives and everything else in between, and I really try and understand what went right, what went wrong, how can I make things better, how can I avoid things that went wrong in the future, and did I have fun? Is this the type of thing that I want to enjoy in the future? I'm going to say it's more than 50% than the physical. There's definitely more mental preparation than physical preparation. The mental side of the preparation for these endurance events is more than the physical, because the physical might be 2 hours today. It might be 3 hours tomorrow. It might be a rest day the next day, and it might be 90 minutes the following day. But there are so many windows of time when I'm training my mind and to be ready for the challenges. You can either move forward or away from it, right? You can say, this is an opportunity, or you can say, this really sucks and I don't know what to do, and become a victim, or, you know, be really sort of not pessimistic, but really sort of taking a step back. Or you can see it as an opportunity to move forward. So because of all the mental work that I've done in the past, I feel like when things don't go to plan, when I don't plan things that just present themselves, or when everything gets thrown out the window and you're left with like something that you couldn't even come up in your mind that could happen, I go back to then thinking, well, I've done all this work on, if something bad goes wrong, then what do I need to do to move forward? So people make decisions on a spectrum, logic or emotional. So we make decisions from a pure emotional standpoint or a pure logical standpoint, and then there's that spectrum. There's everything in between, and a decision can go back and forth, right? So when things go wrong, or when I'm hit with something that I didn't see coming or not planned, or if someone just sort of says, hey, do you want to go and do this? And it's like, well, it sort of fits, but I haven't planned for it. Why not? My decision making is completely logical. I keep the emotions out of it, because that's when, you know, that's when things can go wrong, when you need to actually create some sort of plan. So it's like, okay, what do I need to try and achieve? What are the key fundamentals that's going to help me get there? And how do I achieve those key fundamentals in a efficient way? So I break it right down to, let's say it's a running challenge. Like you said, I ran through a tropical forest in China, and my credit cards didn't work, and there was a big storm. So I didn't have any cash, because I paid to the cab driver to get to where I wanted to go. All this sort of stuff. It was crazy. So I looked at it, okay, what are the key fundamentals to get me back to the airport 100 kilometers? I need to put one foot in front of the other. Okay, it sounds crazy, but that was it. So, right, that's what I've got to deal with. So I stayed logical, because if I went, oh, but I need to eat more, and what am I going to do? I haven't got water and I haven't got food, then I'm wasting time, energy, and effort. And how do I get to this place? It's the decades of work I've done since the mid-90s. So for someone who's like, I struggle to be focused, what's 3 exercises that I can, you know, that I can become more focused at work? And I was like, start listening to your breath. No, but like, I want mental strength training exercises like you do when you go out and you're in big challenges, like how do you stay focused on the task at hand? Like I always get distracted. And I was like, yeah, every day, 10 minutes, count your breath, nothing else, or just focus on it. That's it. And I'm like, no, but that's like, I want the mental stuff where I think and, and as you well know, that's a great place to start, because if you can focus on your breath, that's never going to stop and it's always going, and you can start doing that, then you can start applying that to something else. I don't see things as a glass half full or as glass half empty. I focus on the actual fact that I've got a glass, gratitude. I have this glass that I need to take care of because the glass is fragile. You drop it, it breaks. But also you can put boiling hot water in a glass, freezing cold water. It's very resilient. So I have gratitude that I have this life. And I don't like to think of it as optimistic or pessimistic. I've just got gratitude for what I do have. And really saw that in Nepal, the power of gratitude.
Yeah.
And how you can live with it and really enjoy your life. So now, since I've came back from Nepal, even immediately when I came back, and especially more like in the last few years, is like I talk about this on stage, is don't look at a situation as half full or half empty, because you're focusing on the contents inside the glass. People say to me that what they've seen in my documentaries, and then they've seen what I've been through, and they've read my book, which is literally a very brutally honest autobiography of my life. I spoke about things in the book that I'd never spoken to anyone before, even my wife or my parents or my sister. They didn't know anything until they read the first draft. But I just thought it's an opportunity to be extremely open and help others. But I have been practicing all these things that I've talked about, and people say to me, like, you are happy and you have overcome so much and you've been through so many things. And it's like, well, yeah. And I've also practiced training my mind. I've also, and you call it whatever you want, mindset, mental strength training, whatever, since the mid-90s, as we discussed, to now. And that's been a consistent element of my life since then. And people are like, see me now and think, oh, as a finished product, I'm nowhere near finished. This is where I am right now, and I can show you where I've come from. So if you want to see the world and you want to live your life and you want to be able to not let external forces change your stride, so to speak, then if you're comparing yourself to me, you've got to see the work I've done and the journey I've been on. I'm not saying you have to go through that, but you've got to appreciate where I'm at in life. I've come a long way and I've done a lot of work. And if you want to have see the world in a similar view from through your lens, then you've got to be willing to put some work in. I had a friend who was a writing coach who encouraged me to write the book. And like, as I said, like they knew nothing about my mental health and stuff I've been through. So I said to her, I said, Jane, she was in Australia. I'm in London. And I said, Jane, whatever I send to you, whether it's a text message, whether it's an email, or whether we speak on the phone, whatever I send to you goes in the book. So I wrote the book and I would just write to her and she would say, oh, maybe expand on this, or maybe we don't need to talk so much about on that. So can you trim that down? So we'd go back and forth. So I would like write her an email with a paragraph of something. And I'm like, yeah, I think that should go in here. Or I'd send her a chapter that we're working on at a time. But then talking about the mental health side of things with the binge eating, the insomnia, the excessive exercise, I would write it to my friend Jane and then hit send on an email, and then spend the next 10 minutes trying to figure out how you unsend an email. And I thought, this could help people. And my mum has always said, you're here to teach people. She said, you'll be a great teacher, in whatever way. You will teach people something. So I just thought, this is a great way to share with others my experience. And that's what I've done.
Mm.
I've had a lot of feedback from people that it's refreshing that it's so honest, and it's refreshing that I've I've shown that I've shown the other side of doing these big challenges where it can be detrimental to your health, your relationships, your life, and also the fact that I'm a guy. I'm 37 now. My book was published 2 years ago. I'm, mid 30s, and do these extreme challenges, and I still talk about the fact that I struggle. I struggle mentally, and I'm not hiding from it. And I don't have to be this macho guy that say, look at me, I quite literally climb mountains and I run distances very few people do in the world, and I swim across between countries. But you know what? Like, I battle with stuff like everyone else. And I've just seen it as an opportunity for me to help others. Finding the internal strength to be vulnerable with my story, that is my life, has been worth it.
Yeah.
Then it's extremely powerful, and it's something that no one can alter. And I mean, being vulnerable from if you're feeling great, be honest. The one thing in the UK that I always see is, how are you? I'm okay. How are you? I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm all right. I'm all right. And sometimes you're like, is that all? You just told me that you got a promotion and this has happened, that's happened, and how are you? Oh, I'm okay. Really? Is that it? Like, if you're absolutely amazing, tell me. I want to know. This is just me, but I feel like if people are more vulnerable from when things are going well, and I know it's not a very British way to be, but I've lived here for long enough now to sort of know that. But I sort of feel that if we can start trying a little bit harder as a human race, then if we can be vulnerable with the truth when things are going well, then I hope that can sort of spark something inside of us to be vulnerable with the truth when things aren't going so well. How are you? I'm not in a good place, actually. And whether or not that's the type of person that you want to divulge that information or why you're not in a good place, then that's up to you. But if they say, oh, why not? Life is just getting me down right now. But you can stop that conversation really quickly. Oh, in what way? I'll fill you in later, right? But you're still knowing that, you're still letting that person know that you're not in a good place. So then whether that's going to work or going to a meeting or seeing a friend, you've set up the tone of how that next part's going to go, because that's how you feel, right? You're not acting. If I did that when I was going through the dark times, my dark time would be a lot shorter. Because when I saw these people every week, multiple times a week, my close friends, how are you? I'm really struggling. My friends are going to say, dude, every time I see you, you've got something going on. What is it? You can talk to me. And whether that took another week or a month, but I know that the friends who cared about me, they wouldn't care what it was. They would want to help because they knew that I was struggling. And that was one of the things I learned when I started to talk about my mental health, was I didn't want to be a burden, and I didn't think other people would understand or even be supportive or knew what to do. But when I did speak up, the support from my close friends was phenomenal. I want to inspire growth in people. And what do I mean by that is I want people to try and be the best that they can be. Not compared to anyone else, but compared to their yesterday.
Yeah.
And in 100 years' time, if my name ever gets thrown around in a conversation, and they look me up on the internet or whatever it is in 100 years' time, people who consume my content or read about me or watch what I've done or I'm going to do in the next however many years, I would like them to sort of take a step back and go, I think I can do more in my life.